Welcome to Falmouth. If you're a visitor, this is where surf and sun meet for fun. If you're a resident, this is where you'll find the businesses and the resources necessary to fill all of your needs. If you're a business person, this can be your home. Join with other men and women who work together to make this a sustainable economy year-round. Welcome to Falmouth, Cape Cod.
Remember, WC Communications is your printing team. We are calm and cool under pressure. You can call us at 508-563-7366 or toll free at 1-800-696-7303.
Ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Monday, August 12, 2013 meeting of the Falmouth Board of Selectmen. The board previously convened an executive session. We are returning to open session. I invite you all to join the board as we recite the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Some procedural announcements before we begin. If you have a cell phone or some other device that might spontaneously and without prediction make noise, we ask that you silence it or turn it off. If you'd like to speak this evening, and we will have opportunities this evening for public comment, we ask that you wait to be identified by the chair, that you come to the podium when you are identified and identify yourself for the record. We may know who you are, but it doesn't mean that our recording secretary or the folks at home know who you are. And please direct all comments to the chair. Please refrain from any private conversations here in the meeting room or immediately outside. It can interrupt the proceedings. If you do choose to leave before the meeting adjourns, it is before the meeting adjourns, and we still have business to conduct, so please do so quietly. There is a speaker's policy on the podium, and we ask that you adhere to the terms there. And if there's anyone here who'd like to record audio, you may. We ask only that you identify yourselves. If you choose to record video, you would require permission from the board. Is there anyone at this time who'd like to record audio or video? All right. And so with that, the first item on our agenda are announcements. We do have one announcement this evening, and although the agenda says discuss, it is an announcement, and for the edification of the Veterans Council members here in the room. There was some question about the participation of non-veterans on the Veterans Council, and according to statute and by the opinion of Town Council, we do have to entertain applications from all individuals for the Veterans Council. And so I would suggest to the board that in the coming weeks, we probably need to develop a policy, because at this point, the board has sort of relied on tradition in years past, where the council is composed of individuals who are nominated by the various veterans groups here in town. But as noted by Town Council, and I pulled up some examples on the web, there are other communities where there are mixed councils. Hingham, for example, has 13 members, 8 of whom are veterans as defined by the Commonwealth. Scituate has 15 members in its council, 10 of whom are veterans. So for the board's consideration in the coming weeks, we probably want to better define the appointment process or policy for the Veterans Council, define the number of veterans and civilians we might entertain on the council. And I would note also, one of the things that had occurred, I had seen in here, was that one of these committees actually has a Gold Star parent on their council, which I thought was an interesting development, I guess, if you will, in that oftentimes there may be civilians who have a personal interest in veterans affairs, such as a Gold Star parent, and they may not themselves be veterans. So that is something that we should, as a community, consider. So we are, a month from now, we will be conducting interviews for the Veterans Council, and we will, of course, entertain nominations from the various veterans committees. And if there are any questions or concerns, I will entertain them at this time. Mr. Mustafa.
Ahmed Mustafa, Precinct 4. Good evening, Mr. Chairman and the Honorable Board. I noticed a few things that kind of tore into me a little bit. First of all, the operation with the Veterans Council has been going on for about 30 years or so. Started at the old town hall. And as far as it goes, I just don't understand. Maybe somebody could tell me, is there something that we've done wrong that this has come up now? So I was just wondering if that is the point of why there's all of a sudden a problem on the appointments. Plus, as you all know, these are yearly appointments. And The appointments come from the commanders of the different organizations, the veteran, VFW, the AMVETS, the ELKS, the DAV, the American Legion. So we have 5 members on the board right now. As you well know, to have an honest board, you have to have an odd number. So if you're going to appoint somebody, I think you should look at also making the another appointment in there so that we have an odd number of people on the board. You can't have an even number because it's not going to work out right. So that's just one of the things. The other thing that I would refer to is the fact that I got a copy of Mr. Duffy's letter. The only thing is, in what he refers to under 115, Section 12, there may be an advisory council in the Department of Veteran Services. Doesn't have to be one, but there may be. Also, just in passing over this thing, if you were to look at the way it should be done according to Mass Law, Chapter 41, Section 105, it states in there that the trustees for the soldiers' memorials, the powers and duties and so on, and basically what it says in the middle part of that big paragraph, in towns, the said board shall consist of the chairman of the Board of Selectmen and 5 members elected by the town in the same manner as other town officers, 3 of whom shall be veterans and 2 of whom shall not be veterans of any war. That's one of the things that you have to look at. Like I say, what you've done is open Pandora's box. And it's too bad, because I didn't think that we were doing anything wrong, and I thought that everything that the Veterans Council was part of worked out very well. We've had a lot of accolades for the ceremonies that we've put on and so on. And all of that comes back to the town. We are an advisory board to the Director of Veteran Services. That's the job of the Veterans Council. And like I say, I was a little torn because I thought we were doing what should be done in helping the veterans of our community. That's our job. Doesn't deal with road problems or water problems or anything. Our job is to help the veterans of this community, male and female. As long as they're a veteran, our job is to make sure that they and their families are well protected. The other thing is that when he talks about the general powers under C-3-2, he's absolutely right. You have general powers under that. However, the powers of appointment shall be town manager, town accountant, 3 members of the Board of Registrars, election officers, and town constables. Now, what it also refers to is the board shall also have the power to appoint town boards as provided in Article 7. Article 7 of the Falmouth Home Rule Charter. And what it states in there is appointive authority in the term. Board of Assessors, Conservation, Board of Health, Council on Aging, Historical Commission, Recreation Commission, Waterways Commission, Beach Committee, Human Services Committee, Zoning Board of Appeals, Historical District Commission. I don't find anything on Veterans Council. So I am torn, and I'm a little upset over the fact that all of a sudden, out of the clear blue, the Veterans Council is being taken to task.
No. The short answer is no. The Veterans Council is not being taken to task. There's nothing that you or any other member of the Veterans Council has ever done anything wrong. What happened in this situation is there was an interest by a non-veteran to become a member of the Veterans Council, and the question was asked, was it possible? What were the guidelines? When posed to Mr. Duffy, what we got back was the opinion that there could in fact be civilians on the Veterans Council, and oh, by the way, other towns have that sort of a structure, that as many as 15 members may be appointed, and so on. So it was more or less the sudden realization that maybe one of the traditions or the processes that we'd been doing year in and year out, we perhaps need to refine it. Not that anything was done wrong by the Veterans Council. If anything, it was prior boards had failed to establish a proper procedure for appointing the Veterans Council. You don't find the Bikeways Committee in the documentation that you have there, but in fact we have a Bikeways Committee. So it is incumbent upon this board, and I would hope, Mr. Mustafa, that you might join us. Perhaps you and a member of this board and Frank Duffy could sit down and iron out the details of how we might form the Veterans Council going forward and make sure that it is properly advertised and that all of the members are duly appointed. Agreeable?
Sure.
All right.
Whatever is going to work for the town, that's all I want to do. I just want to make sure that we are available to take care of our veterans, that's all.
And we agree. We don't want to get in your way of doing your job. We simply want to make sure that we're following the letter of the law as we do our job.
Okay. And, you know, the reason I bring that up, I happen to be reading something today. It said Massachusetts was the first to take up arms to fight for freedom. And if that's the case, we're here to follow that through, to get freedom and justice for our veterans.
Mr. Chair, if I could, we could adopt the policy that we've been using the past 30 years as the policy that we have in place.
We could, yes.
I mean, that's certainly an option. We could say, yeah, actually, it's working great. We just don't have it a policy of our board as to how this is done yet. And that, I think you're suggesting is, then we should have that written down.
Right. We also need to, in some way, make some accommodation for civilians to be a member of the Veterans Council, because that is part of the state statute.
Right.
Can I just suggest that, Mr. Muster, and you summed it up perfectly, Mr. Chairman, that no one's taken the Veterans Council to task. But maybe it's important to read into the record the letter from Town Council, so that folks out there who don't have the copy of this letter, when something comes to the board, we can't not pay attention to it. And that's the bottom line, is what's come to our attention. And that's why we're acting as a board on behalf of that. So if we can at least read this into the record, and your suggestion of moving forward and coming up with a policy would be probably advantageous for all of us.
Would you be willing to do so?
Well, I thought the vice chairman's job is to read all those things into the record. I know your policy, so.
Dear Mr. Suso, this letter is my reply to your question submitted on behalf of the Board of Selectmen. The board wants to know if it can appoint one of its members to the Veterans Council. Briefly, the Board of Selectmen consists of 5 members elected for 3-year terms to serve on a part-time basis. Members of the board are compensated and are regular municipal employees for purposes of the Conflict of Interest Law. All executive powers of the town are vested in the Board of Selectmen. Falmouth Home Rule Charter by Falmouth Home Rule Charter C3-2. The Veterans Council is a multi-member body established under General Laws, Chapter 115, Section 12, and the Selectmen are the appointing authority. Council members receive no compensation and are special municipal employees for purposes of the Conflict of Interest Law. Council members are not required to be veteran. The council operates independently of the Board of Selectmen. The Veterans Council provides policy leadership on veterans issues and is referred to as an advisory board in the statute. Veteran services are provided by a veterans agent who is under the supervision and control of the town manager. Following a review of the relevant charter sections and the general laws, I do not see a prohibition for this appointment. Section C3-8B of the charter decrees the member of the Board of Selectmen shall be ineligible to serve on multi-member bodies established by the charter or town bylaw. Because the Veterans Council is established by general laws, this provision does not apply. The State Ethics Commission publication on Selectmen notes that Section 20 of the Conflict of Interest Law from holding a paid position permits you to hold as many uncompensated positions as you wish, so long as all the positions you hold are unpaid. However, it is necessary for a member of the Board of Selectmen appointed to the Veterans Council to comply with 930 CMR 6.02 and submit a disclosure form found in 930 CMR 9.01, subcategory 6. This disclosure form must be filed with the town clerk. Any appointment should follow the usual procedures to publicly announce a vacancy on the Veterans Council and accept applications for appointment. All candidates should be interviewed and the final vote taken in an open meeting. If a member of the Board of Selectmen is appointed, the appointed member should have all published qualification for the office. Assuming a member of the board is qualified, then there should be no issue with Section 23B2 of the Conflict of Interest Law by conferring an unwarranted privilege upon the member. I understand that no present member of the Board of Selectmen or family member is receiving benefits from a program administered by the Veterans Council or Veterans Agent. Frank.
Is there any member of the board who would like to volunteer their time to sit down with Mr. Duffy and Mr. Mustafa to iron out the details of an appointment policy for this purpose?
I'd be happy to.
All right, any objections from the board? All right, Mr. Jones will be sitting down with you.
Very good, thank you, Doug.
Mr. Dufresne?
For the record, Adrian Dufresne, and I am the commander of VFW Post 2569. Today, I submitted my resignation and assigned the responsibilities of Post 2569 to Ahmed Mustafa. I take exception to some of the things in Frank Duffy's quotes. Mass General Law clearly states that the Director of Veteran Services will be appointed by the mayor of a city or the selectman of a town. Mass General Law says the veterans agent will conduct 24/7 the needs of necessary facilities for veterans, their families, widows, the entire gambit of what the Chapter 115 benefits are all about. There's no such thing as Mr. Suso's control and supervision, in my eyes, of the Veteran Service Officer. He's a 24/7 employee under Mass General Law. So I take exception to that quote. I've been on the council for 25 years, and I took exception a year ago when you, as our appointing authority, did not recognize us during a critical situation here in Town Hall. And I've taken that to heart. You people are elected by the people of the town of Falmouth. You appoint the the Veterans Council, and the 5 of us are all here. We have the state commander for the AMVETS over here. We've contacted the state. You'll be hearing from the state. We're offended that this policy now is being challenged. And it had nothing to do except Rebecca Moffett said that she would like to be appointed. She can be the liaison of the Board of Selectmen. We have nothing to hide. In my tenure on the Veterans Council, we've done some great things. We brought the Vietnam War years ago, a tremendous project for the town of Falmouth. At no cost to the town of Falmouth, we completely redid Memorial Lane. None of you remember how bad that area looked. At no cost to the town, came out of the council's donations account. A veteran donated $8,000, and we're the ones that supervised and organized and got the project done. So we try to do things on behalf of you, our appointing authority. And now I get the message that we're not quite good enough, that we need help from someone else. I take offense to that. Today I submitted a resignation. I hope you people representing the town of Falmouth understand that we probably have 5,000 or 6,000 veterans or more living in the town of Falmouth. And the services provided by that office don't have to be supervised or controlled by a town manager. The guy is a 24/7. I visit him 2 or 3 times a week. We put the flags up, we take them down. Am I going to ask permission from whatever committee? I got to take the flags down sometime this week or next week. We put them up, we take them down. We do the things that are necessary from the Veterans Council in helping the Veteran Service Officer do his job. We encourage him to do his job, all right? And that was the whole purpose of the appointment of the Veterans Council some 25 or 30, I think it was 40 years ago. I just get overly upset at what I have been reading and hearing from this board, the elected Board of Selectmen elected by the people of the town of Falmouth. Mr. Suso does his job on day-to-day activities. The Veterans Council, the Veteran Service Officer, is not a municipal function. It's a mandate of the state, something that the town of Falmouth accepted back in 1954. when they accepted Chapter 115. It's been operating just the way it is right now until tonight. And I take offense, and I want that on the record.
And it's duly noted. But I would like to remind you, Mr. Dufresne, and I want to remind everyone, that we're not changing the task or the role of the Veterans Council. And we will. And we're not going to change what the Veterans Agent does, or how he reports to the town, or how he does his duties. It's simply having to address and accommodate, if you will, the state law that requires us to post an interview for any committee, and this includes the Veterans Council. So.
One last note.
Adrian Dufresne again. I don't know how long it took Mr. Duffy to come up with this appointment. I have great respect for Frank Duffy. I've worked with him in this building. We have, Mr. Mustafa is probably the best guy for research and law, which I totally admire. I'm glad when he brought up, he didn't bring up some of the things that he's already picked up on. I've been consulting with Jay Hill. Jay Hill is now the state representative for Veterans Affairs from the town, for the whole state, all right? What you people are trying to establish here in Falmouth is really going the wrong direction. I would hope you would listen to your fellow selectmen. You don't need a policy. You don't have to change something that ain't broken. I have respect for the board. You read my letter of resignation, regretfully and respectfully. But don't do something that's going to undo something that's worked so well. Like I say, I've been on the council now for 25 years. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mark Finneran, Precinct 6. I'm really not up to speed on this thing, but is it my understanding that a member of the Board of Selectmen wants to be part of the Veterans Committee?
It has been tradition, if nothing else, that a member of the Falmouth Board of Selectmen is a member also of the Veterans Council.
As a liaison?
No, as an actual member.
Now, doesn't the charter state that a selectman cannot be a member of a committee to which it's the appointing authority, with the exception of the EDIC? And that required a charter change several years ago to...
As was read into the record, Mr. Duffy noted that that relates only to charter, town-created committees. When we're talking about state, and this is where the Veterans Council comes into play, it is a state-created committee, if you will, that does not apply. And traditionally, the board has had a member of the board, part of the Veterans Council. When Mr. Mustafa was selectman, he was also a member of the Veterans Council. He was the board's representative to the Veterans Council.
Oh, he's a representative, but not an actual member, because I would think that you would have to abide by the charter first, but...
State law trumps the charter, and that's what Mr. Duffy noted in his memo.
Joe Quintiliani, Precinct 9. I am the recommended person for Falmouth Veterans Council. I used to be the past commander. Now I'm the senior vice commander. I think maybe a can of worms is to be opening, but my question is that, a couple questions. The last couple of years, we haven't had a representative from the Selectmen's Board. You fell through on that one. Mr. Bragdon showed up on his own to come to our meetings and take information and present it to you people that need it. Also, all of us here are members on this committee, and there isn't a month that goes by, we don't get a call from the Veterans Office and saying, we need some money. What can you do? I know my DAV in the last year has contributed over $750 just to buy $25 food stamp cards, food cards, Stop and Shop. If you appoint members that have no connections, ability to turn around and help the Veterans Council, or help our veterans mainly, we save your taxpayers' money. Every year, we have a meeting, and Veterans Office comes up and says, we need about $1,000 for food stamp cards. No, I shouldn't say food stamps, it's the wrong use. It's the food card for Stop and Shop. An emergency. Or we have a person that's waiting for his benefits coming from the state. He has a job, but he can't afford the gas. We get calls, we get emails. I contact my chairman. Okay, give him $25. I get reimbursed. Do we have, when you appoint these people, think about what assets are they going to provide other than sitting on a meeting and telling the Veterans Council how to spend money when we're donating the money? All right? I mean, I don't want to sit there and say, okay, you want $1,000, I go back to my DAV in the Falmouth 81, saying they need $1,000, and now you got a bunch of people that you're appointing saying, oh, we only going to give 500, we're going to use 500 for here. That wasn't the intent. The Elks yearly donates their facilities for after Memorial Day and Veterans Day. Our other organizations pay for the food for the citizens of Falmouth to go and have after these events. It's a rotating basis. I might feel slighted saying if you got 3 other people on the committee and we're only the ones contributing. We have to work that out. That's something I'm going to have to work out with your committee. We give more than what you see. We give more than what you hear. We give because we're veterans. We know what a veteran needs. We've been through it. At the coffee shop, Joe, how long did it take you to get your benefit? 13 years. They need a shoulder to talk onto. If you have a person that's a non-veteran, doesn't understand it, how can they help that veteran? I'm also on the committee for the Doreen, well, it used to be the old Doreen Grace Center. Now it's called the Veterans Outreach Grace Center for traumatic brain injury and post-traumatic. We just had a big stand down. We had over 150 veterans come into this past Saturday. And they're looking for how they can get assistance, how they can get help. And we can direct them. We don't know everything, but we've already been through the gamut. All right? So just think about your appointees, how they're going to benefit the veterans. And I can't speak for the different organizations, but if it's going to be going around in a circle that we're constantly paying, you know, we'd love to have some advisors, but on a voting process, some people might get offended. Thank you.
Understood and noted. Thank you. Anyone else? All right, from the board, Ms. Moffett, and then Ms. Flynn.
I want to speak to each one of you this evening. There was never one intent in my mind to ever have all of this discussion. It was simply that I looked down at the chairman and I said, I would like to be on the Veterans Council with the idea that whatever was happening at your meetings, that you needed that information to come back to the selectmen, I was your person. That's all it was. All of a sudden, I have legal matters, I have information that I never thought I ever needed to know because your job was running smoothly. I simply looked down and said, I'd like to be on the Veterans Council. We have had more discussion when there is so much that needs to be discussed in the town, and especially on our agenda this evening. And I apologize to each and every one of you that this kind of conversation came to this point. I wanted to be the person who would sit in your meetings, listen to what you're saying, come back to my position and report it. So what we have now is a lot of information and a lot of emails, some not so nice, and it is simply from that sentence that this happened. And I apologize to you. It's my greatest respect for any veteran. It was the reason I said it. So from this point, we will have a conversation here, and we will see how that turns out. It was never a voting position. It was never whether there's 5 members. It was never to say someone should leave and someone should be on it. It was that one sentence. So I hope it clears up something, and we will see if I sit down with you and hear some things, and then I may have a conversation here. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. I just think it's important to state for the record that when Mr. Mustafa decided not to run for re-election for selectman, he did come to this board and said he has been our representative on the Veterans Council, and he would like to continue in that capacity, and we agreed and we appointed him. So he has been, for these past 2 or 3 years, the board's representative on the selectmen, just for the record.
And I think it's important to note, those of you who were on the Veterans Council this past year, you had some concerns that the Board of Selectmen was not responding to your needs. Board of Selectmen had an appointment to the Veterans Council. That was Mr. Mustafa. One of the scenarios in years past was one of the members of the Veterans Council has always been a member of the Board of Selectmen. It wasn't a liaison. It was an actual member of the Board of Selectmen. So maybe we were somewhat remiss letting Mr. Mustafa represent us because we alienated some of you folks over that period of time because you didn't think you had the communication with the Board of Selectmen, and meaning the actual appointing authority. To that part, we live and we learn as we move forward. But, you know, no one's saying that anything that the veterans have done in this community, specifically the Veterans Council, has been slighted of anybody. I think they've done an excellent job. They'll continue to do an excellent job. However, there are other wars out there that were just recent wars. Since this all came about, I just recently got a letter from the military support group, and they would like to be represented because they're representing folks that are coming back from wars that are going on right now. So maybe this is a good, healthy discussion. But no one's kicking anybody down here, folks. What we're trying to do is make this better for everybody, specifically every veteran who's served this country and served that flag in this community. So I hope that this is going to be an exercise that's going to benefit everybody in this community. Thank you.
Just one more case statement, too, that relating back to what I just said about Selectman Mustafa, the other reason was that none of us who had remained on the board after that time were veterans. And we were always under the impression that a board member had to be a veteran to be on the Veterans Council, which is why we also supported Ahmed Mustafa. And then when Ms. Moffett made the suggestion that she would like to be, we said, well, we've always been under the impression that one had to be a veteran. And that was the reason for the letter to Frank Duffy, or from Frank Duffy. Can anyone who is not a veteran be on the Veterans Council? That was part of what precipitated him writing that letter to us, that we could clear that up to see if it was a requirement or not a requirement. That was all. And as we said, here we are. But I have to say, too, I mean, I have no greater respect for anyone in this town as I do the veterans. What they have done in the past and what they continue to do now, and even the Falmouth Military Support Group, that everyone does a really wonderful job representing the people who fought in those wars, who really need that help. So we praise you and thank you for the work that you do.
Something new, Mr. Mustafa?
Very quick.
Okay.
This will be very quick. First of all, Ms. Moffett, thank you very much. Apology is well accepted, and your words fit right in. So thank you for that. The second thing is, Mr. Murphy, maybe they got lost somewhere in the wilderness of this establishment. 4 requests were sent to come before the board. We never were notified that we would be put on the agenda. We sent 4 requests to the office to get put on the agenda. That's all I can say. I just wanted to clear that up.
All right. So with that, again, a month from now, we'll be looking to schedule interviews for members of the Veterans Council. And in the interim, we'll be looking for Mr. Mustafa, Mr. Jones, to work with Frank Duffy and develop an appointment policy for this committee. All right. Any other announcements from the board or the town manager's office? All right. Next item on our agenda, we have the quarterly report from Police Chief Dunn.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, board members, Mr. Suso, and Assistant Town Manager. Thank you for allowing me to present my third quarterly report of the Falmouth Police Department. Staffing levels. We're funded for 58, as you are aware. Right now, we have 2 cadets in the Boylston Academy, and they're in their 6th week. I get emails from them every week. They're surviving. They're learning a lot. They're looking forward to the end. It's a 22-week academy. I'm only in their 6th week, so I told them they've got a little bit more to go. Just the other day, the town manager and myself and some staff has given a conditional offer to another candidate that we hope to get through the process. We still have to proceed through the physical, the psychologicals, and the PAT. Once those are accomplished and those are passed, we'll be attempting to get them into the next available academy. Our hopes were to hire 3. We ran into a little bit of difficulty doing that, and the difficulty was we couldn't get enough candidates. So instead of missing out on an academy and waiting till next year when the new list comes out, we opted to hire 1. That being said, I do anticipate this fall some more vacant positions coming up, some retirements coming up. So come this fall, we will be back to 4 open positions that we hope to fill off the new exam that was given in June. It's normally given in April, but due to the bombing, Civil Service had to cancel that, and they gave it in June. So we'll be waiting for that new list to come down, and when that happens, we'll be moving forward with appointing 4 more candidates to the police department, and that should bring us up to the 58 funded positions that we have. Also, we have a full-time dispatcher, Midnights, who has just been deployed till January. She's doing well. She also sends us emails, and we wish her well in safety. From April to June, calls for services. I'm happy to say during that period, we're down from 2012, 2.93%. Self-initiated calls, those are the calls that the officers create themselves on the street, motor vehicle stops, checking buildings, etc. There were 3,116. Dispatch calls, that's the phone calls come into the police station and they're dispatched to call to your home or your business or whatever you need, accidents. That was 3,848 calls, for a total of 6,964 calls for service from the period of April 1st to June 30th. But we were down from 2012. Some of the major crimes that we've had during this period also, we've had an assault and battery with a dangerous weapon, happened in Burger King. There was an arrest, that was solved. You're aware we're still working on a double homicide, and there was a stabbing on Homestead Lane in July, and a warrant is issued for that suspect. Our narcotics investigations, we've had 8 controlled purchases. That's where we have undercover officers purchasing narcotics from the individuals. We've conducted 5 search warrants. We've seized $20,963 in drug assets. Type of drugs that have been seized are heroin, Percocet, cocaine, marijuana, and various prescription drugs. And out of those investigations, there's been 4 arrests. I've ordered 2 more cruisers that came out of the capital that was approved. They're going to be 1 line car and 1 supervisor's car. The line cars are the ones that have the screens and cages and the transport prisoners, and those are the ones that your officers respond to. The other one is the supervisor's car, the sergeant's shift commander's car. So those will be coming. We're expecting them sometime in late October, early November. All the events that have gone over the summer here, the street fair, 4th of July, the Barnstable County Fair, and the Falmouth Road Race. All of them were very successful. The traffic plan that we initiated during the 4th of July, we believe went extremely well. However, it does need to be tweaked a little bit here and there, and we plan on doing that for next year's 4th of July. But we did see a lot less traffic jams. Traffic was constantly moving, which in the past it has just been stopped. The success of the Falmouth Road Race, which just happened, was due to a unified command that we formed in the partnership with the different agencies. It wasn't just the police department. We partnered with the fire department, the United States Coast Guard, the harbor master, state police, sheriffs, and the newly formed Cape Cod Regional Motorcycle Unit. You may have seen motorcycles around town yesterday from Provincetown, Chatham, Truro, Hyannis, and Dennis, as well as the 2 Falmouth bikes that we had. Prior to the event, I'll speak about this, the Cape Chiefs decided to form a regional motorcycle unit, similar to what we have for the accident investigation unit that we have. We have 2 members on the accident investigation unit, and should we need officers to come and investigate an accident, say our officers are on vacation or they're ill, I can call a number and someone may come out of Provincetown to investigate a serious accident. So it's a regional asset. It's wonderful. And we did the same thing for the motorcycles. For the road race, I requested a total of 10 motorcycles to include our 2, and we had 10 motorcycles. And the event was very successful with those motorcycles because they can get to places that the cruisers can't get to. So it's something that the Cape Chiefs decided to do, and it's working out very, very well. And on that, we send our 2 motorcycles to other events. Our 2 had just participated in the Pan Mass, and they assisted with that race. So it's a great asset. We just finished our National Night Out / open house at the police station, and I know some of you have attended it. That also was a success. We had approximately 250 visitors come to the station. We also, again, partnered with the fire department. We invited them and the Coast Guard, and they had a boat there and everything. The kids had a great time climbing on boats and cruises and motorcycles. We had several businesses in town donate food. So we had hot dogs and hamburgers and pizzas for everybody, and then we gave them tours of the station. And I believe there was an article in the paper from some residents that really enjoyed it, and I've gotten several emails from residents that really enjoyed the tour of the police station and the equipment to see what assets we have in town. It's all theirs, so they might as well come and see it. And we're going to make that an annual event because it was successful. We're already planning for the fall. We have the Cape Cod Marathon, of course, which is October 26th, 27th. We're preparing for that. We have the Zumba race in September, and of course the annual Christmas parade. So we're gearing up for that. Also, interior of the police department, the command staff. This Friday, we're going to be having an assessment to fill my captain's position of specialized services. And that's going to take place Friday, so I'll be getting my command staff in place. In-service training. We've talked to you about training before, how the state cut training. This year, again, the Cape Chiefs got together, spoke with the training council, and for a cost of $1,000 for this town, I can send officers to the Plymouth Academy or the Yarmouth Police Department, which will be a satellite academy, so they can get their in-service, their 40 hours of in-service this year. The $1,000 is for the instructors. Each department will be paying $1,000. A couple of departments are paying $1,500 because of the size of their departments, such as Barnstable and Plymouth. So the only cost to the town will be cover their overtime while they're gone if I have to replace them on a shift. But it's great, something that we haven't had the last 3 years since the governor cut the budget on training. And on that same piece, I've also applied to Maya, our insurance company, for a $5,000 grant. And what we plan on using that money for is the firearms simulator that we normally get, where the officers are put through. It's a big video game, is what it is. And we can put different scenarios to check their reactions on in a shooting situation. So we're hoping to get that. And we've also been guaranteed by Maya, they're bringing down a driver simulator trailer. And all our officers will go through that driving simulator trailer, which again is like a big video game where they go through different situations with a cruiser. And that's what's happening in the Falmouth Police Department. Do you have any questions?
Questions from the board?
Well, I do. How many of our policemen are going into the professional development that we're spending $1,000?
The whole department will go through it.
Oh, there's no bargain like that.
No, and the $1,000 is again, between all the Cape Chiefs, you're talking somewhere in the vicinity of $15,000 to $16,000, and that goes towards the instructors.
Well, I
So it
heard
is a
you
good
say all
buy-in.
that part, I just wasn't sure
Yeah.
how many that was going to be.
The whole department, including myself.
When we are signing permits or permissions, whatever, for road races, whatever, the carnival that was last weekend, how much stress does that put on our police department when extra things come into the town and we talk about it here and we say, yes, you can, and you send the notice in and say it's fine? But what happens there?
It depends on the size of the event. The smaller events, they're usually a detail, so the officers are available to do that. It's your big events, such as the road race. I had to cancel days off for the road race, similar to what I did with the fireworks. Everybody had to work on that day, including myself.
I have heard you say that. You know, I was remiss. I should have started my conversation with you in saying that I believe this road race felt that it ran as smooth as any road race, and I was there when the first one happened. And the one little story I will tell you is that I live off Minot Road, and at 6:30 this morning, I'm coming down Minot Road that I know what it looked like yesterday because I walked home. And as I came down, I'm looking, and I said, I cannot believe how clean the streets are, how safe we felt in everything that was happening. Everything that you were part of planning worked beautifully.
Oh, thank you.
It just worked perfect.
Well, again, it was a team effort. All the agencies and everybody in town, as far as the DPW and everything else, we all worked together and got it done.
Well, a lot of people could say that, but it may not have the results that you had. So I compliment you.
Thank you.
It was a big job. It was probably another word there. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Just a couple of compliments. Number one is I'm always very happy that we're moving towards our full complement. Public safety is a major issue in the community, but when we have positions that are left unfilled, it's hard for us, this board, to go to bat to try to get more positions. So I appreciate you and your command staff getting those people hired, moving them through the academy, and I know it's a constant chess game, and I take my hat off to you. I remember that Chief Riello and I would always banter about that. Come on, fill the positions that you have before we can get you more.
I can tell you this process, as I said, we were going to hire 3. That was our goal. We started it in May.
Right.
And we just couldn't get the candidates. So we settled for 1.
Speaking of that, I know that one of the issues is that the town of Falmouth has a minimum or age to be hired. And I know that's not only for the police department, in other words, a maximum age, I guess, is not only for the police department, but the fire department. And that's not similar to other communities. Is that something that we need to look at? Because, in other words, you can't be over the age of 32 or something of that nature. Are we missing the boat, first of all? And second of all, does this board need to try to work to put something forward at town meeting to change that?
Glad you brought that up. We are missing something. In fact, this summer we had a summer officer who had put himself through an academy. He was sponsored, and he is just turning 43. He's done a wonderful job for us this summer, and we can't even look at him. I have submitted some paperwork to Frank Duffy to review to rescind that age limit for the police department for town meeting. So you will be seeing that this year.
Okay, that's great. And the next scenario is after the tragic events of the Boston Marathon, I know that public safety was on the minds of your entire team, and I want to take my hat off to you as well as the other departments in this community and outside this community who helped make the event a safe event. I know that some folks weren't totally happy that they couldn't come by boat, they couldn't come, with their backpacks, but we live in a different world, and I appreciate you protecting the other folks that are there and making people feel comfortable to come to this community when we have events like yesterday, as well as things like the fireworks.
Thank you.
Okay.
Anyone else? Questions from the public? All right. Thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
I have to tell you, excuse me, why I'm laughing. Because a few years ago, when I was in Plymouth, the chief had that video training program for the officers, and he invited the town manager and me and a couple other department heads to go down and just see it. But he gave us the fake gun or whatever it is. It's not a real gun. But anyway, he said, all right, now it's your turn. And so there was a house, a big brick house, with a front lawn and a car and all that. And I was supposed to watch to see what was going to happen. And this man came around the corner with a machete, waving the machete. So my job was to react and do something. Well, I failed because I would have been dead before I shot the gun. He would have gotten me first, so I think it's a good training program.
It is great training.
That's why I'm laughing,
We've
because
had it before,
Yeah.
but it's about $4,800. And again, it's not in the budget, so if Maya will give us that grant, we can bill Maya directly
great.
for it, and it will help. And I will have an open offer to all of you to come to that, as well as the driving training.
I think that'd be better than the taser offer you gave.
Yeah, I didn't see anybody step up for the taser. Have a great night.
Thank you, Chief.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right, next item on our agenda, we have the annual shellfish regulations presentation by the DNR. Mr. Martinson.
Good evening. Chuck Martinson, Deputy Director of the Department of Marine and Environment with the town. I'm joined this evening by Matt Weeks, who's our fisheries technician that we recently hired this last winter to help us in our endeavors to improve the shell fishery in the town. What I wanted to do first, if I could, is just give the board just a real quick update on where we are at now from the last time that we met. We've had a bunch of significant projects going on, including the merger of the department, Herring Run up in North Falmouth, a bunch of other major projects going on. As far as it relates to shellfish, we have the Little Pond project that our staff is essentially the boots on the ground for the oyster growing in Little Pond. We have approximately 3 million oysters that are being grown in varying stages of their life and being placed in approximately 3,000 oyster bags over there. They're doing very well. And we also have running concurrent to that our quahog project, where we will have a total of 5 million quahogs, which we'll be seeding this year. And the third project, as far as it relates to shellfish, is the construction of our new propagation facility, which is located at Falmouth Harbor. That project was funded through funds that were allocated at Fall Town Meeting, with support certainly on behalf of the town manager, assistant town manager, and the Board of Selectmen. The facility was put together with labor from the Barnstable County Sheriff's Department. It is, I would go out on a limb to say, probably one of the nicest propagation centers, if not the nicest, on Cape Cod. I'd invite everyone from the Board of Selectmen to come down and see it. It's been highly visible. We wanted it to be visible so people could know how their shellfish is grown, but it actually had a kind of backfired on us a little bit, because whenever we open up the doors to work on the shellfish, there's droves of people that show up. So we want to keep our staff efficient, so we have to schedule our times when we do our cleaning to low volume times, so that we're not absolutely inundated by tourists and local people who are very interested in how we grow shellfish. What we're here for tonight, annually, and I'm sure a lot of the board members who've been on for a number of years know this, mainly for the benefit of Ms. Moffett, because we haven't done this before. Annually we go through and we do shellfish regulations for the town of Falmouth. What I've done is, you should have all received packets that have essentially highlighted areas in them that show the changes. Generally what we do is we go through them, and what I've done is I haven't highlighted them in other years, but I did it this year just so the board has it at their fingertips. They can see the changes we're looking at. And I'll just jump through, if I could, to a few.
Just before we get to the regulations, can I ask one question?
By all means, yeah, sure.
I read an article recently about other Cape municipalities having issues with oysters being stolen or poached.
Right.
Are we seeing any evidence of that, or is there a reason we are lucky enough of not having it happen?
There's a few reasons that we're lucky that has not occurred here, and we have to be extremely vigilant. so that we can police the resources and investments that we have at this point. Primarily, our shellfish at this point, they're only 1 year old, so they're less than a year old, so they're extremely sublegal. They're much, if you saw an oyster coming out that was an inch long on your plate, you'd question where it came from. And that's where we're at right now, roughly. They're an inch long. They're also, their geographical location of where they are, where a lot of the thefts were down Cape, were within areas where people could drive a vehicle up to the grants, particularly on the outer Cape. They have significant tidal flux, so people could drive right out to the grants and steal the oysters. Part of the Little Pond planning was patrols of the area, which intensify as the animals get larger. So those patrols are increasing overnight as the shellfish get larger and become more of a threat of being.
Thank you.
Taken. So if you have your packets.
Yeah, but we don't have the highlighted version.
We don't have the highlighted.
Oh, you don't?
No.
I was told, I checked in with the office this morning, that your version should have, not the yellow highlighted, but it should be a little bit darker. Okay, check
For
it
your,
out.
like, if you look at the last page, you might see
I don't know if that,
this section,
Oh,
the
it's
truck
a
is being
little
dark
gray?
on your, yeah,
it's
it
a
is,
darker
it's
gray.
grayed.
It might be grayed on your copies. I have an extra.
Not every page has
Just one.
changes.
I have one copy here.
There's the last page,
I don't have any.
actually, it's the last page and the page, the third from the last page, indicating closing of areas for shellfish resource
There's
management.
not that many changes in there.
Yeah,
to-
there are
to begin
3
with.
changes total that I can see here.
I could read those if, just quickly read them. I have one extra copy.
If you could, actually, that would be helpful,
And then I'll go through.
because we have the master copy for the file, but
And I have one that I will pass along, which is unhighlighted, which is the one that we will use for a signature copy if we could. So the 6th page, it's, the area is, it says up top, Wuquay Bay in southern Bournes Pond. The change in this area is we are requesting that the board allow us to close down Bournes Pond for the season of 2014. When I first took over for Paul Montague back in 2004, every 3 years the area would be rotationally closed down. It gets hit so hard in the summers. There's very limited places that you can shellfish in the summer. It gets intensively hit or picked and fished throughout the summer. You'll have 100 people plus a day that'll go there. It needs a break at this point. We have not given it a break in a number of years. What we hope to do is we will seed it this fall. Then we will go ahead and seed it again next fall, and then in the spring of 2015, go ahead and open it up. A lot of people are certainly conditioned and used to fishing there. What we intend on doing is when we sell the 2015 or 2014 permits, we will have something right at the counter that we pass to every person who's going to buy a license, so that if that is their primary place to shellfish, they will know that. And I think, again, on the other end, every other year that we've closed this down for 1 year, it's paid dividends. It just gives it a year to naturally reseed, and then we'll go ahead and help that along. And then if you flip 2 more pages, this is the only other change that we had, and this is picking up where we left off on some discussion last spring. Actually, I believe it was late last winter we actually started this discussion. One of the things that we had brought up to the Board of Selectmen is that, as the financial situation and the economy swung, we were seeing more people buying shellfish permits, and thereby, we were concurrently investing less in the fishery. We had more shellfish licenses that were being handed out, so the fishermen that were remaining in the fishery were really struggling. They were being hit essentially from both ends. What we strive to do, and we came up with the general concept with this, with working with the commercial fishermen, is to bring that commercial license to a number that's sustainable. And what we had done last year is we we're going to initially put a cap on the total number of licenses and set that as our base and then work back from there. The total number of licenses that we sold last year was 79 commercial licenses. And what I'm proposing right now is that through attrition, we continue to bring that number down. The target number that I think at this point would be, would allow our fishermen to earn a modest living shellfishing and allow our stocks to be appropriate would be roughly 55 permits. We would look to the board when we got down to 65 permits to develop a method by which people could become involved in the fishery, whether it was a waiting list or they would be selected randomly. That is something that we would entirely leave up to the board, certainly supporting whatever the board's decision would be. But again, I think it's a critical piece to this large investment that we're putting back in to have this in place. I don't know if there's any questions on that.
A couple of questions.
Sure.
Don't we have a different license for a student too?
Yes, sure.
A commercial, so is that included in this or is that separate?
Sure, it's a great question.
Okay.
Sorry I didn't bring that up when I was initially speaking on it. The one thing that the commercial fishermen did bring up is that, commercial shellfishing from time to time is passed down generationally. So what we allow is we allow for, first of all, a student digger. So anyone who is in high school, and I believe, I have to just go back and look, I believe it goes up to through college to come in and purchase a license. If after they wrap up their studies and they want to continue with the license, they could continue with the license, and they could totally be granted relief from being added onto the waiting list. And the thought behind it is just the major concern from the fishermen was the generality, the generations of fishing and the history, family history fishing, and certainly support that and feel that we've accommodated it. So as long as they're in high school or they decide to jump in then or a little bit later on, they can go ahead, jump in. That was something that was already approved by the board, and then subsequent to them leaving school, the price would go from half price to full price, and they would remain on as a full-time fisherman.
Even if the cap were set?
If the cap were set, that would be independent of the cap.
Okay. That's, because I know that was an area that was discussed before. I was just hoping the cap wouldn't affect it.
Yeah, it would not affect the cap. So, if we did get to, 55 permits and there were 3 people that came in, via a student situation, that would be separate. It would not affect the cap.
Okay, thank you.
I have a suggestion on a change of wording.
On what again?
A change of wording.
Okay, absolutely, yep.
Your middle sentence there,
Yep.
Their second sentence says, through attrition,
Yes.
the number of commercial permits will be reduced to 55 permits.
Yes.
You could put a period there and say, when commercial shellfish licenses fall below 65, a
Okay.
waiting list procedure will be considered by the Board of Selectmen.
Okay.
Because there may be something else by then. You might have some other suggestions.
Okay. If it's possible, I can correct that language and then get the
Yeah.
document back for signature, if that's all right?
That's
Or
fine with
would
me,
you-
but
would
it's
it-
okay with the
We
board.
could hand correct it tonight, or however the board.
I think it just makes it more clear.
If the board's
If-
agreeable to
If the
the...
board's agreeable to that.
I don't have a problem with that.
Then the other question I have is on the very first page.
Yes.
What is a two-level town-approved container?
There's a number of.
Does everybody know
there's-
what that is?
Yeah, there's the first page is,
It's under commercial.
yep, those are the orange baskets. They're required in the general bylaws.
So fishermen know what that means?
Yeah, that's a common,
Okay,
it's actually stated in the bylaw, so.
great.
And so I don't know if the board would like to take a vote on that tonight, or how I can bring the wording changing, bring that, maybe perhaps take a vote conceptually, and then I can bring that back.
Are you going to take public comment before we do a motion, or?
We will take public comment, yes, but does the board...
I don't
feeling
have
the board
a
to
problem
proceed with
making a
this tonight?
motion,
Okay.
including Pat's change tonight, so that even if we leave it in the selectman's office for signature afterwards, that would, I don't mind making that motion. But I didn't know if you wanted public comment before anyone made motions.
Do we have any questions or comments from the public? In the back.
Hi, Ron Zweig, and I'm on the Water Quality Management Committee. And I'd like to, first of all, I'd like to praise the department, the Marine and Environmental Services Department for the excellent work they've done in conjunction with or in cooperation with the Water Quality Committee on the shellfish aquaculture demonstration project. And that Chuck and Matt and Greg and Doug Fugere and Anthony have been great, and Sia Karplus on our side has also been very, very effective and very proactive. And it is, when he mentions the word 3,000 bags being put out in the pond, this is a lot of work, and it's working very well. And once we got everything through and the support from you, from your board, from the Conservation Commission and others, we now have a very good monitoring program in place. And so water quality data is being collected and things are moving very well with the whole thing. So it's really getting in sync, and it's been an enormous task to get it moving, but momentum is there, so it's going well. I just wanted to thank everyone for the great support on this.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments from the public? All right.
I'll make a motion to approve the 2013-14 annual shellfish resource regulations with the one edit that Mrs. Flynn made. On the final page, it would be on the second sentence, when our commercial shellfish licenses fall below 65 permits, striking the words "at the time." Is that correct?
A comma. Then, yes, and a comma, the Board of Selectmen will consider.
Okay.
Okay.
So that, with that correction.
I'm sorry, the Board of Selectmen may consider, is what I said. This
Okay.
says will consider. I
Okay.
suggested we say may consider.
May consider, okay.
So it leaves us a little room.
Sounds good.
Okay.
Yep.
I second that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion on the motion?
I just have one discussion because I don't want Chuck to go before I ask him this question.
I got a few more things for you, too.
Oh, okay. My question was the survey out off of West Falmouth.
Sure, we're getting, I was going
Oh,
to talk
after
about
this,
that
okay.
after that. Yep,
So we'll
sure.
go with I won't cloud the issue then.
All right. Any other discussion on the motion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposition? It's unanimous.
I'll just, if I may, Mr. Chairman, I'd just like to bring the board up to speed on where we're going to go from here. Three main points. The first is there's discussion that we've been looking at in-town relays for moving shellfish around within the borders of the town of Falmouth. We're hoping this fall, one of the fall tasks for the fisheries technician will be to go ahead and seek out and survey some areas to do in-town relays. There's a number of different places that I think we're going to look, but we hope to come back to the board with some opportunities to move some shellfish within town. When the large presentation was given, half of those relays that you saw were in-town relays. So we're going to look to in-town relays in the future. And that is also reflected in our proposal for our annual budgets from here forward. We're proposing $20,000 for in-town relays. The second piece to it is we hope to come back to the board to discuss a little bit more intensely areas that we can use to grow our shellfish from the time that they get out of the nursery and the time they get out of our growing gear to harvestable size. And we might be looking to potentially take some small sections of areas and we will engage certainly the fishermen in this discussion and hopefully take some areas where we can use those as as rookeries to grow these shellfish up to size. And then thirdly, onto that point, we'll be looking for guidance as well. And I think that's all I had for now, but we will be back probably in 2 or 3 months to have a discussion about where we can plant these shellfish. So, thank you. That's all I had.
Any other questions?
I would just make a comment about the propagation facility that is over at the marina. I was quite impressed, and I think I was most impressed with the product that was done because it would look like someone's patio. And as you would walk up, and the way it was painted, and I looked, and it was very attractive.
Thank you.
And I think you're right. Everyone is gawking and staring and saying, what is that? And then, of course, when you look at all those little pieces of sand inside, you have no idea what they're going to grow into.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. All right, the next item on our agenda is a presentation and discussion of the wind turbine issue. The board has previously discussed keeping these discussions amongst ourselves until we have some general discussion, until we have something to discuss with the public, and I just want to confirm with the board that we're going to continue with this practice as we did the last meeting. Do we want to continue this as a board discussion at this time, or do we want to open it up to public comment this evening?
Mr. Chairman, my personal opinion would be that the board start to narrow what we plan on doing, and then at one point take public comment, pro and con. And we're surely available to folks in the community as we move forward. But I think we've had a multitude of comments at public meetings, on both sides of the issue, and I think the board needs to continue to roll up its sleeves to narrow its decision, and then at some point have public comment before we make a final decision, of course. That would be my suggestion.
I definitely agree.
I'm okay with that.
All right, so we're in agreement. Would you like to come to the podium, please?
I'm John Carlton Foss, and I would like to request permission to videotape.
Any objection from the board? So granted.
Thank you.
Mr. Suso.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. We have prepared a PowerPoint presentation, a very brief one, as a matter of fact, to provide some summary information to the board. In addition to that, of course, a 15-page report from the staff has been prepared and transmitted to the board. This was a result of the directive provided by the selectmen at your discussion session at the library on July 1st, and at which the board essentially tasked members of the staff with exploring the remaining wind turbine option process group's alternatives, and also providing some detailed cost information to the board to get a better insight into the operating financial responsibilities and fiscal realities of the turbines, as well as addressing questions which the board had raised also at that meeting. And that 15-page report is directed to addressing those, and happy to discuss that further with the board, answer questions that may arise, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. That having been said, we'd like to provide this summary PowerPoint as well, if that would be agreeable. If so, we'll proceed, and Heather will kick that off.
Sure, Jerry, thank you very much for agreeing to forward the slides for us. I'm grateful that you're in the audience, so if you could move on to the next slide, please. As Mr. Suso indicated, the document was prepared and transmitted to the board. The work that you see before you was the result of many weeks' effort with the town manager, finance director, and town council. And it was developed with respect for the fiduciary responsibility of the board moving forward operationally. Next slide, please. There are specific recommendations that appear on the last page of the report, and they are that the Board of Selectmen act to designate a preferred alternative or alternatives, that the board then ask the staff for further detail and to articulate this in all of the options and nuances of any of the recommended strategies. Town council has advised in response to the concerns raised by neighbors, pending litigation, and the concerns of those who support neighbors, that a responsible resolution must include a mitigation component. Through the process of developing a report for the board, we've learned that a production of the turbines exceeding 80% provides sufficient revenue for which a mitigation package could be included for the wind turbines to provide revenue to support mitigation. We'd ask that the Board of Selectmen affirm a timetable for implementation, suggesting a final decision in the month of September, with implementation of that decision beginning in October, and that the board affirm this process this evening, August 12, 2013. What you have, I'm not sure if, Julian, have you handed out the chart already? Before you, you all have a multi-column worksheet that we've worked over several weeks to develop for the board's consideration. You go back, thanks. For 1 second, thank you. They are estimated financials for operating the wind turbines. They were prepared by Sustainable Energy Advantage with guidance from town staff. Next slide, please, thank you. There are some key assumptions that is written on the worksheet that each of you have, but I wanted to just take a moment to reaffirm what those are. Again, prepared by Sustainable Energy Advantage. The reserve fund contribution in all cases is, I'm sorry, that shouldn't be on there, but it is under the assumptions for all cases. The operating reserve is replenished at $200,000 per year for 5 years, for a total contribution of $1 million to a reserve fund to be set aside for the operation of the wind turbine, recognizing that we have operated those turbines over the last several years in a manner that is not as contemplated in the initial operations, and there's a potential that the board's decision will be to continue an operational strategy for time of day controls. We've talked many times about the staff concerns about that and the need to ensure that any business plan and operating plan provides the appropriate reserve fund. All of the cases assume that the obligation to deliver Wind 1 RECs to the Mass Clean Energy Center during years 6 through 20 has been forgiven, and that all RECs from Wind 1 would then be able to be resold on the spot market with a value placed on those at $24 per megawatt hour. And we just note, and this is from Sustainable Energy Advantage, that electricity markets are inherently volatile. It affects the market value of net metering credits, excess electricity sold at wholesale, and the REC values over time. The analysis presented relies on the most recently available data to estimate future net metering credits and REC values. Deviations from individual forecasts should be expected to change as market conditions change, and it's therefore appropriate to consider a range of potential outcomes to make an informed decision. And I just note that the initial planning process surrounding these machines did anticipate a volatile energy market and began with a reserve that reflected that. Thank you. Now this is a little fuzzy. Each of you have a copy of the options in front of you, and I'm going to turn this portion of the presentation over to the town manager.
Thank you, Heather. And I really want to acknowledge and thank Heather for her extraordinary support and assistance, along with the other staff colleagues that she's mentioned in our assembling this spreadsheet. And as the board can see, what we've done is we've included in these operating projections the other options looked at by the WTOP group. Of course, on the far left, and it's a snapshot beginning in fiscal year 2015 through 2025. In the far left column, there are 7 different columns, of course, 7 different operating scenarios. Our current 12-hour operation, which was put in place by the board at the beginning, just before the beginning of the WTOP process. You know the background on that. I won't go over it again. That is about approximately 51% of the uncurtailed production. And of course, as we're well aware, it essentially is involved in a negative cash flow situation, which we have discussed in the past, and the need to rebuild the reserve fund, which has been started out at a little over $1 million and is now nearing zero, requires the $200,000 per year for 5 years and drives it further into the red. The next one following that is the break-even scenario that WTOP included, again with the adjusted reserve requirement we've talked about, of replenishing the reserve fund to its original amount of $1 million, so that we operate in a responsible and business-like manner. That would represent about 68% of uncurtailed production, again with several negative cash flow situations in the early years. On the far right, I'll jump past the other four that come following it. Far right is 100% of operation, of course. That's the other scenario looked at by WTOP. You can see the estimated production there, the amount of revenue generated, including the creation of the appropriate reserve, and going from 2015 to 2025. So what remains is to look at the trend and allow this spreadsheet to properly inform the board as to what the trend looks like from its current 51% of production to 100%, and we selected some steps in between. So you've got the 51%, the break-even scenario, WTOP in the second column, and the next four between that and 100% production, one being at 68%, then 76, 84, and 91. Again, give you an idea of the trend going forward and the percent of production you need to be looking at if it is the intent of the board, as town council is recommended, as we've noted, to establish a mitigation account, mitigation fund, and consider a mitigation process going forward. The third column, of course, gives you several initial years of negatives. The fourth column, and that's with both turbines optimized at 16-hour operation. We're operating also at 68%. There's some variation between that and the WTOP break-even, which is also 68%. And just so the board understands, those are the vagaries within the projection model that allow some variations in hours of operation on the part of the model. So that's the reason that you get into some variations over the annual cash flow in each of those scenarios, because they are different based upon the assumptions. Then going into the fourth column, which would have Wind 1 operating at 12 hours, Wind 2 operating on a 24/7 basis. That would generate 76% of uncurtailed production. And as the board can see, we have modest amounts, a little over $20,000 in positive revenue in FY15, $28,000 in 16, and so on, and it grows in the latter years. The fifth column would have Wind 1 operating at 16 hours, so it would be down for 8 hours in a day and operating for 16, and Wind 2 continuing to operate on a 24/7 basis. You generate 84% of the total potential uncurtailed production, and you see that that increases by 3 to 4-fold the positive revenue that you would have for mitigation purposes annually. And then the next to last would be a 20-hour operation for Wind 1 and continuing 24/7 for Wind 2, and jumps you up to 91%, again with the revenue there. And again, the point of this is it gives the board a general sense of the percent of uncurtailed production that you would reasonably need to consider if it is your intent to build up a mitigation fund as town council has suggested. And again, our purpose was to portray this dynamic and indicate that what you need to consider if that is your intent, going forward in terms of operation of the turbines. There is no extraordinary magic to what those numbers might be in terms of hours of operation, and obviously the board remains in a position of control and decision-making as to where ultimately you would determine that to be. But again, the purpose of this table will show you the general trend, give you a sense of what you need to consider overall if you are to make mitigation part of your overall intent. And this table connects as well to the 15-page staff report with further details on cost, revenue, and spending, particularly on the benchmark areas identified by WTOP, the 12-hour, the break-even, and the 24/7, and then you have the numbers in between. And Jerry, if you'd flip to the last page just for a moment, last PowerPoint slide. I'm sorry, jump back one. Yeah, again, what we're respectfully suggesting is that the board act to designate one or more preferred alternatives among those operating scenarios that would allow we as staff members to further detail and articulate that alternative or alternatives in options and nuances. Town council, as we've noted, suggested that the responsible resolution include a mitigation component. If the preferred alternative, and I think you see that from the spreadsheet, includes a production exceeding what we feel would be 80%, we think there's sufficient dollars there for us to work and bring back to you, again, just for your discussion, further deliberation, a potential mitigation package or packages to include as part of a final ultimate determination by the board. And we would ask your consideration in affirming an anticipated timetable for implementation, suggesting that the final operational decision be considered in September with implementation in October of 2013. Again, underscoring the fact that a reserve fund is essentially dropping to zero, and there is a need to consideration for acting and moving forward. And I think we do have that one more page on there, Jerry. Thank you. We would ask the board's consideration of affirming a process tonight. In other words, giving us marching orders going forward that we can bring back to you in 2 to 4 weeks, once again, allowing you to move forward on that timetable if that is your pleasure. Happy to answer questions if that would be helpful.
Just on the table of numbers you've given us, you have an end year as 2025. Is that just to limit the amount of information we're trying to process, or?
Correct. That's a good point, Selectman. It's strictly to limit information. That can be projected out for several more years. And our intent was to give all members of the board a sense of this trend.
Okay.
And that's all this would do.
And so the bottom line number is just those years, not what it's going to be at the
Absolutely. That's not a grand total.
Okay, thank you.
Couple of questions. I see in the second column over here, this, adjusted reserve requirement. Do all of the other options to the right have a reserve or as well?
Yes, all options on this table would accumulate a reserve at the rate of $200,000 a year.
Okay.
So that over 5 years, we would reach that $1 million mark that we started with.
Okay. One other question and one other thing that I would like to see is we have a multitude of options, and one of the options I'd like to see is I know we have one option here that gives us Win 1 16 hours and Win 2 24/7 operation, and then the next option goes to Win 1 20 hours, Win 2 24/7. I'm wondering if we can put together an option in there of Win 1 20 hours, Win 2 20 hours, because we do know that there is, although it can be contested by some folks, there was an exceedance in Win 2. We have not done nighttime sampling on I was wrong there. There was an exceedance in Win 1 in nighttime operation between 1 and 3. We're not quite sure. We've done some testing on Win 2, but not at that time. So I'd just like the opportunity to be able to see if we just did the 4 hours on both of those shutdown, what the percentage would be.
It'd roughly be 84%. Just
That would be my quick train of thought, but I'm just wondering that. I don't know if one generates more power than the other. I don't know, but, okay.
Go ahead.
Just a clarification to
Yep.
Selectman Murphy's question about the break-even scenario. We wanted to be clear that the report that you have addresses all of the options of the WTOP report, and that we made a change to the assumption that you find in the WTOP report to increase the reserve fund, and we wanted to be upfront with the board about that. But
Okay.
all of them include the same reserve.
The slide noted October, so one of the things that we had discussed last month when we had the whole issue, when we had our board discussion about this, was the timelines going forward in terms of where's the drop dead date, if you will, in terms of finances and so on. So are we saying that October 2013 or thereabouts is where we have to have something in place by that point, or we're really going to start to be suffering the financial effects here?
Well, I guess the best answer is we're already suffering the financial effects, and the longer we delay, the more we put this complex machinery at risk that we cannot responsibly operate it. If we suffer a catastrophic failure, for instance, today, we have no reserve fund. And that is a business risk that we must look at very seriously, in my judgment. We have machinery that is leaving its warranty period. It is being operated in a manner in which it is shut down and started up each day, a manner for which it was not initially designed, as Vestas will confirm. And we need to be very careful and prudent in the manner in which we operate it. So I would just affirm that from a financial standpoint alone, I, as town manager, am uncomfortable with the reserve fund that is essentially depleted and not being built back up. So I don't mean to dodge the question, Mr. Chairman, but I believe that time is of the essence in that regard.
No, you've answered the question. Thank you. Other questions from the board?
In thinking about your question first, Kevin, and thinking about a 20% and then looking for exceedance on 2, is your point? And you're saying that you expect there to be exceedance in 2, or you're just asking for that? Or you're just...
I like the number in the mix. I have no idea whether there's an exceedance. I know, is it all right if I...
Yeah, go ahead.
We know that there was an exceedance on Win 1 in the nighttime.
Yes.
It was at one property. But Win
Right.
2 has never been
That's right.
tested in the nighttime. I'd just like to be able to have the idea and the ideal. I live near Old Silver Beach. I don't hear the turbines, but I can tell you if there's times in the evening between midnight and 4 a.m., I will go out to walk the dog, which I no longer have, but I could hear a car on Route 28 because it is very still. So I don't know whether we would not have those exceedances if we tested for them. I just want to be able to give ourselves all the options. I'm not saying I'm vested to any option. One of the options that's not shown, I would like the opportunity to see.
And my next question would be to you, Mr. Chairman. When you were talking about October 1st, do you have any kind of feelings about taking one of these options and voting on it this evening? Or you feel you don't have enough information to make that decision? I mean, is it a point that I think there has been so much information, and it continues. It doesn't stop. And I think we have had weeks and weeks and weeks of this. And I think also the process, as I understand, is that we need more time to discuss, but I'm on the side of saying there's been a lot of discussion. And so I'm on the shortest of timelines myself. because of the amount of information that each one of us sitting here and are going to vote, we have so much information in our minds and that have been given to us, and we have an idea of how we think which one of those options are going to work. So I don't understand the length of continuing. The information that you have right now, I believe by the time the vote comes, will be the same information. I don't think there's much more you can tell us.
No, and you may be right. I think where we go this evening is going to depend upon the board, not just me.
Well, I was just,
But I would say that where we're talking about mitigation here.
Yes.
That we need to, and of course it mentions town council as well, and I would remind the board that we are in the midst of litigation, and the board may want to ask for town council's feedback with respect to these options before we make any decisions, and how these options and how we pursue these options may affect the litigation that we have before the town.
Not knowing which options I would be encouraging us to, I think the preferred alternative, one piece of information I would like to have is when the WTOP was meeting, I was under the impression that CEC was willing to, if we were going to run the turbines, pay for a sound study as to what effect they had. And so I would love for the staff to reach out to them and find out, are they still willing to participate in that kind of research? Because that would be helpful for me to know as I chose a package to know where we're going to be able to monitor them effectively or not.
I'd like to address Ms. Moffitt's comments, and it would be easy for us tonight to make a decision on which one of these we would do, but it would not be very thoughtful and very fair to do that at this point in time, because we'd only be making a decision and an option on the operation, not in regard to the mitigation. I think this board, and you're talking about several weeks, this board, for those of us who have been on this board, I know from the first day that I got elected over 2 years ago, this was an issue, and it's something that we'll continue to wrestle with, and I want to make sure that we're thoughtful coming out with a solution that has the entire package, and that would include the mitigation. And so in other words, we could attach mitigation numbers. My suggestion tonight is that we task the town manager's office with taking each of these scenarios, and maybe we can narrow them this evening, but come back and say, if we choose option, for the lack of better terms, option number 7, we will have available to us X amount of dollars for mitigation. And then the board then will have a little better knowledge of how to come up with a decision on which operational plan we would have. What, maybe a proposal of what that mitigation could look like. Will it be purchasing homes? Will it be buying acoustic easements? What will it be? So I think we need to task back again. You know, maybe the board can narrow down some operational ideas here. I think that we all know what happened at the ballot box, and we don't have the money to spend right now to be able to not run these turbines. The voters were loud and clear. So, but we do have the ability to be flexible and come up with the proper mitigation and the proper operational plan. With all due respect, that could be 24/7. It could be still 12 hours. I don't know. But if 12 hours are surely saying there's no mitigation. So I'm looking at that right here. So that's realistic. That one's off the table in my mind. So because there are some of those folks that are grieved enough, that we've heard loud and clear that they may want to sell their house. They may want to be able to put some kind of noise barriers or something of that nature. I'm going to task back tonight the town manager's office to come up with the alternatives, and maybe the board wants to discuss tonight narrowing these options, the percentages, and then task the town manager's office to come back with potential mitigation packages for then the varying options. Of course, the more you run them, the more the option could be, the mitigation package could be. So that's my 2 cents worth.
Well, that's kind of my question too. I want to follow on that because the recommendation says a responsible solution must include a mitigation component. So if you look at column 1, it's all in the red. So that doesn't look to me like there would be any room for a mitigation. And 2 and 3 have obviously deficits in them. So maybe they couldn't include a mitigation component. And I guess my other question is, what does that mitigation component need to be in terms of dollars? Are we thinking that all of the mitigation could come from the operation? Or are we maybe looking at other sources that might provide us some mitigation? But our decision tonight in terms of, we have to think about, the operation is going to have to fund the mitigation. If not all, at least mostly all of it, I would think. Is that a fair statement to make? Is that our decisions that tonight, the options that we want to look at, are those that can actually help fund or completely fund, or just simply have a mitigation component?
Well, my short answer would be that the board, it would be my hope that the board would determine and give direction tonight as to whether you intend to have mitigation. If so, there are a few supplementary sources we can explore, and I would intend to do that fully on behalf of the board. But I believe that the town has to step up first, and there needs to be a clear statement by the board, if that would be your intent, to consider operating in a manner where some reasonable dollars would be set aside for mitigation, and that's why in the recommendations, the sense was that needed to be in excess of 80% to begin to generate significant revenue to even entertain that. Again, that revenue we would seek to build on. There's no guarantee that we would be able to secure revenue from other sources, but it would be my intent to pursue that if that is a direction that the board would give.
So to really accomplish that third bullet under the recommendations, to have that the resolution must include mitigation, we're really only looking at the last 3 columns. Is that?
As this spreadsheet.
I mean, is the way I look at it
Correct.
right now. Is that?
That's, I understand it that way. It is only the last 3 columns that would include the money that you would start with, that you would
That
have from the mitigation. Yeah.
The capacity to produce mitigation funds.
Yeah.
Or a hybrid,
Or
like I suggested,
hybrid.
maybe a 2 20-hour ones,
Right,
something like
right.
that.
Not necessarily exactly that,
Right,
but the bottom line would be the same.
I think Mr. Suso brings up another good point, and I think maybe that's something that the board should task him with this evening, is to, if we come up to task him with moving forward with a mitigation plan as well as an operational plan that exceeds the 80%, but task him to engage the state, who have said that they would be willing partners. In other words, on behalf of the board, that we're looking at mitigation, whether or not they would be interested in participating with us, i.e. maybe a dollar for dollar scenario, whatever it might be. So we'll get a little bit more bang for a buck, but we're making a good faith effort that we're going to operate these machines as fiscally responsible as we possibly can without providing a downside for the town of Falmouth, meaning litigation-wise as well as operational-wise, meaning in operating them during exceedances.
I do have to point out, this is all on the assumption that the RECs are forgiven, which is already a step forward being put by the state. That, I mean, it's not like we haven't asked for anything, got nothing. We're already assuming that we're getting something quite substantial. I agree we should ask for more, but there could very well be saying, we've done what we can. If they're really.
But the RECs, I think, only represent about $1 million. I mean, when we're talking these kind of numbers, that's really not that huge a number.
So, I don't know if we need a formal vote. If we're all in agreement, we can say that we have consensus here that we'd like the town manager's office to pursue exploring the potential of mitigation options, and perhaps providing some more details about what those mitigation options would be. And did I hear that correctly from everyone?
Yeah, and I think that there will be different mitigation options with different operational options. Each of them will be tagged differently.
So well, do you think that it won't be the options that will be different, it will be the dollars for mitigation that would be different? Because we haven't even come to a discussion on mitigation options. Is that? So we're talking mitigation funds, not mitigation, not what that mitigation would be.
Correct.
I mean, if you look at even the last 4 columns, what would they generate in terms of mitigation funds, and maybe if we could look at what we think we might need for mitigation funds, if that's, I don't know if we could even do that.
Just to respond, if I may, one of our difficulties here, of course, is we're breaking new ground. I don't know that anybody has a comfortable assessment of what an appropriate quantity would be. But if it is the intent of the board to consider operating scenarios in the upper portion of this table, that would begin to generate some funds, so we would have some options, and that's why, candidly, it appears it needs to be in the upper portions. Otherwise, as you can see, the generation of revenues is so modest that it would take a considerable period of time for us to be able to do anything, let alone discuss mediation. So that's the realities that I think come from this table. And if the board would express a willingness for that to be explored, we would be happy to bring back some thoughts and suggestions. But again, we're breaking new ground, so I would like nothing more than to come to the board with a figure and say, well, if you can get here, then I think we're in the right place. Again, as more than one member of the board's reminded us, we are in the midst of litigation. It's unknown at this point where we may end up, but there is a recognition on the part of those advising us legally that mitigation is an appropriate course to consider putting in place. So in that spirit, if the board is willing to give us that direction, we would certainly come back in 2 to 4 weeks discussing with the appropriate parties as comprehensively as we reasonably can, and bring you some options to look at further, maybe that would allow you or make you more comfortable with a final course. Unknown and strictly up to this board, obviously. Question. We give you that time to put together mitigation things, and presuming at the next meeting the board can agree upon, I'm sure at some point we're going to have some public comment as we narrow down, and I would hope that we would. But presuming that we come to a decision on operational plan as well as what the amount of mitigation would have to offer, do we need to go to town meeting with that? And in other words, we have a warrant that's looming out there for fall town meeting, so we also need a timeline on this. What would come first, the chicken or the egg? Meaning, in other words, would we just implement the operational plan and then wait till the spring to go to town meeting, or do we have to go to town meeting because the funds would be generated from this? I think even if we generate the funds, we'd have to appropriate in some form or fashion.
Yes.
That's the question.
Yes.
Well, just to interject, we would explore those legal questions with town council, if that's the direction we get from this board, with the intent that those portions of any mitigation package that this board would agree to, the portions that would need town meeting approval, we would certainly plan to take the town meeting either in the fall or in the spring, or both, as would be needed. But there are some nuances, legally and otherwise, that we would want to explore, but did not want to do so prematurely. So we want, that would be within the next step, and we would be fully willing to explore those nuances as we talked about.
I would like to look at the last three columns that say 24/7, 24/7, 24/7. The last three, 84%, 91%, and 100%. And see if there is a will of any of the members of the board that would agree those would be the three that the town manager would look at as far as the mitigation costs and how much money that would raise on the last three columns. Wind 1, 16 hours, wind 1, 20 hours, or both turbines 24/7, those three. And my point in all of this is what I started the conversation with. There has been so much discussion and information and exceedance and equipment and scientists and the real and the not real and not using the correct information. It goes back and forth and back and forth. And I think we are now at a point that we see the numbers, they're right in front of us. There's been a lot of work in putting all of that together. We need to have money for mitigation, and we need to start it at some point without saying that we need to find one more thing out. I would just like to know the will of the board in considering the last three columns, and I'm making that a motion.
I'll second it,
Okay, motion and a second.
at least for discussion.
Mr. Murphy?
For discussion, I would also like you to add into your motion, and I could be persuaded to ask, to vote for that, to have the town manager direct it if we provide the one option that would be wind 1, 20 hours, wind 2, 20 hours, that provides, our general math would still say it's the same as 84%, but I want to make sure that's correct. So I'd like that other option. It's not up there, but that option there.
No, you spoke of that earlier, and I certainly accept that.
So
Yes,
you'd
yes,
amend
no.
your motion?
I would amend the motion, yes.
Okay. Further discussion?
I'm not comfortable abandoning the fourth one from the right. I'd love to still see what the effect of that one would be. I prefer one option that does not increase the amount of what Wind 1 is doing right now.
I'm sorry, what did you say?
The
Which one? The
fourth
fourth
option
from the right?
does
Yeah.
not increase the
The
operation.
fourth from the right.
Yeah, the one right in the middle, the Wind 1, 12 hours, Wind
Oh.
2, 24/7.
You want that included?
I would. I'd be much more comfortable if we were not removing that from consideration.
We now have 5 columns.
Well, I still
Four.
think, I think the one that Kevin's asked about is really, is a confirmation, are the numbers the same? And once we know what the numbers are, we can then choose the operation, but really, it is, what effect do those numbers have on possible mitigation processes? And how far different is that from the one that's already up there? I think that's much more of a yes/no thing than really looking at the numbers.
So
Before I would accept that as an amendment to this, where we already have accepted one, I would like a conversation while we're having it at this point from the town manager. With the town manager, excuse me, through the chairman, if there are 5 columns that we're going to discuss, one being Wind 1, 12 hours, and then you will be able to say, and what is the end of your sentence, Mr. Jones? As far as the mitigation is concerned?
I'd like to know what mitigation options that would allow us to do.
I'd like to try to focus the board back again. While I appreciate where you're trying to go with this, Ms. Moffett, to try to focus the board and try to get us to move along, I think the motion, even as amended, is too narrowly defined. I think, first of all, if we're going to talk about mitigation, we need, first of all, to find out what the cost of some of the mitigation options may be. We have the totals here for each of these columns, notes at the bottom left, it says funds available for operation and mitigation. I think it would behoove us to try to, as was suggested earlier, try to define what is needed for operation and what's left over for mitigation for each of these options. Because part of the discussion that we may have with the public, and certainly if we're going to put forth an option here, is, Mr. Jones asked the question earlier, are the neighbors willing to participate in any sort of research if we operate the turbines more frequently? Well, I think that's one of the things that we need to get some sort of feedback from the neighbors on, whether they'd be willing to participate in this process going forward.
It wasn't the neighbors, it was.
Okay, I would just come back.
Or the Clean Energy Committee.
Clean Energy.
But there's the cost of the mitigation options. For example, if we were going to insulate a house, what's the potential cost for each house, for insulating every house? There's the idea of separating the operation and the mitigation so we can see for each of these operations how much mitigation we have available to us.
But this isn't for O&M, is it? These numbers here don't, O&M is already covered.
Right.
The operation of the turbines is already covered without these
Net
numbers.
revenue.
This really, I think, is just mitigation.
So at the bottom left, it says funds available for operation and mitigation. That's just essentially the funds available for mitigation.
Fundamentally, but also there may be some unforeseens in operation again.
Okay.
You know, this is early in the life of the turbines, but it would be more primarily for mitigation than operation, yes. Maybe Heather would have a couple
I
comments.
just have a comment on the discussion, and I think all of those columns represent an operational production of 76 to 100% if you start at the fourth column. And I think the board could have continued discussion about what hours those are and which turbine they apply to. This is simply to give the board a context for your deliberation. And I think if we got guidance that you were looking at something at 80% or column 4, whatever that might be, then we would come back with, required mitigation, recommended mitigation, additional mitigation, whatever that might look like, so that the board doesn't have to be as specific about what the operational strategy is, but we would have an understanding that it would be at a certain production level. And you could do some more work on that.
Yeah. See, I think if we just stick with the last three, just because they offer the most, that tells us a lot. Because if we decide that we don't want to do that, we want to do less, it's always easier to figure out less than it is for the last three. At least it gives you what the most value there is in the mitigation out of that. Now, whether that is sufficient, whether that meets the mitigation cost, or to what degree it does, I think that's where we have the discussion. How much do we want the operation of the turbines to contribute to mitigation? And when we know what that, and that's what the staff is going to do, is come back with that report. We can always go back to the others if we need to, but at least we get the maximum value out of it by taking the last three. At least that's the maximum value.
Would then make sense, just choose the 84% as an example, saying, okay, what would this do? And then we know, well, we actually need to do more. We need to boost the production, or we can get away with less. That having that one data point, I think, as you're pointing out, as long as we're not throwing out the other options,
Yeah.
I would feel very comfortable saying, yep, choose that one and show us the mitigation processes, what could happen, and then we could say, that looks good, or we need more, we need less.
Well, see, you're the mathematician in this group. Now, is that something that would be helpful, or do you need more? Do you need one or two more on the side, on the upper end?
I think any direction like in that regard is helpful. The only thought about having more than one data point is that it might assist the board in moving more expeditiously toward whatever point at which you might be comfortable, as opposed to a single point and then continuing to work around that. But we're happy to go in whatever direction you'd be most comfortable with.
I think we can narrow it down to two, just the 84 and the 91. From that, we could very easily interpolate what would happen if we went up to 100, or what would happen if we went down by having the two data points that are about 7% of points apart. You could very easily make some adjustments.
I agree. I think Heather has a comment.
Well,
Mr.
yeah,
Chairman.
I may be looking for us more than the board is ready to give, and I understand that. But the more of a baseline or a bottom that you wouldn't go below, I think would be useful, not as much for developing the mitigation options, but for the town manager in working with the state. If they know that there's a threshold that the board will not fall below, then we would get a lot more, I think, of a robust and genuine response from any agency that may be willing to assist us further. But if they don't know where the board's bottom is, then we're still fishing.
A question for, and maybe it would have been instructive to have town council here this evening, but I guess one of my concerns is how far we can go through this process before we start wading into the waters of how this might affect the litigation with the town. Obviously, we need some more additional information in order to make some serious decisions here, but should we be consulting our legal team before we start saying this is the bottom, that we're not going to go any further below? Or is that inappropriate as, say, just a guideline? And I guess I'm asking town management for some guidance here in terms of...
Well, I can confirm that town council has been involved in the preparation of the report, the 15-page report that's been presented to the board, as well as involved in discussions on the spreadsheet. And so town council is fully aware that this is being discussed this evening. Within that context, of course, town council did ask that the sentence be added expressing his opinion that mitigation should be part of any reasonable resolution to this circumstance. But beyond that, did not give any definitive direction. So my intent would be, if we can get some directive from the board to work on a mitigation package, certainly town council is going to continue to be an important part of that process prior to us coming back to you with more definitive information.
Well, I'm not really comfortable in saying that, say we pick 84, that I'm not willing to go below that. I'm not sure that we want to do that tonight because we don't have enough information, you know? And I just think that we ought to go, I can accept 84.91 and just do the extrapolations on those. It doesn't mean that we can't move in either direction, either up or back. I think it will give us a lot of the information we need to be able to see what the impacts are. So I would say that if we ask the staff to pursue 84 and 91% and see what those numbers look like, and have our in-house mathematician here help us in the interpretation, that would be great.
Would you like for me to repeat my motion?
Got it.
Would we go back that far in the very beginning, or everyone has it in their head? That I made a motion, we had an amendment, we were looking at the last 4 columns. And the 3 that you see here, and the one that Mr. Murphy included. So I would say it's, that's the motion, that's the amendment, and so what you were saying is outside of where the motion is.
It's less than the motion. The motion has more.
The motion has more.
I think.
I'm okay with the motion.
Yeah, I think what Becky's saying, the only thing additional the motion has versus what we're talking about, it has the 24/7 built in them. So we might as well put it on the table and look at it. Then we'll know at least what the high end is, the highest potential end is. I can live with looking at that.
So it's the last 3 columns plus the one that you added, which is the 2020.
What Doug thinks is, and
is
we
the
all
same
probably
in the
think, but it might not be.
that'll be verified.
Right.
So we,
Okay.
I'm okay with that.
All right, well, it's the motion, we have the second. Do we have any further discussion? I will say that I'm not going to vote for the motion at this point because I think the other options, I don't know, I guess I have concerns about the fact that it may be limiting what we're looking at if in perception only. I think the break-even operation is still an option that's available to us. And I think it's something that should be considered by this board, and not just options that include mitigation. I think when we open this discussion up to the public and we say this is where we want to go, or these are the options we want to pursue, I think we have to take into consideration the fact that there may be neighbors who would prefer no mitigation but a reduced operation, that they would prefer, because obviously, for example, one of the issues that we need to consider when we make this decision is that mitigation implies that we're going to, for example, insulate a home, but what do you do for the yard? And that's been one of the constant complaints that some of the neighbors have, is that they can't enjoy the full extent of their property. So while we could sit here and say, well, we're gonna go with this option, and we're gonna offer mitigation, and we're gonna do things like insulate homes, well, that may be rejected by some of the neighbors because insulating homes may not satisfy some of their concerns. If one of those concerns is that they can't use their property to the full extent, that they can't be out in their yard when the turbines are operating, so.
I guess to clarify what I think the motion is to direct the staff to give us an idea of what mitigation options could be, or packages could be created under those schemes. We know there aren't any mitigation options that can be created under the break-even. We know the other mitigation option is time that they're running. And I could still see voting in favor of the break-even option once I see the mitigation option packages on these other two just aren't good enough. And say, you know, I don't see anything attractive enough there to vote for that. I'm going to come over to what you're saying, well, I think the break-even's a better strategy. But by directing the staff to do what they're doing, I don't see that we're dismissing any of the options as being not possible. It's just we don't need that information to choose it.
Fair enough.
Just one other thing, is that this board was as supportive as potentially possibly could have been, moving forward, folks having the enjoyment of their yards. But we don't, as I've said to many folks, I'm not the wizard. This is democracy, and the folks in this community spoke and said they didn't want to pay for that. Whatever, even the break-even option is not going to provide the option to use their outdoor yards during the day, because they'll be operated during the day. So we have to be realists. The only option that provided that was taking down, stopping the turbines and dismantling. We went through the entire process, and the voters in this community spoke loud and clear. So I agree with you on one part, but we know that ship has sailed. It's unfortunate in my mind, but that's what folks in this community told us. They're the ones who are paying the bills. They're the ones that are making the decisions. We're just here carrying out their will. And I think that, you know, as Doug said, you know, break even might be a little less. We'll come to that conclusion. But let's give everyone the other part of the opportunity. There may be some folks there that want to move on with their lives. Let me sell my house, let me get the heck out. I don't want to. We know they don't want to leave, but give me an option that I can live with, and that just let me move on, because those might be an option. And, you know, there are both sides to the coin there, and I understand that. But our hands are tied in what we can do to one certain point. And Doug has a good point. We can always back down if we need to go to break even. If the mitigation means nothing, we'll know that it means nothing to these folks. If we can't buy their houses, those who want to sell them, it's probably a useless cause anyways. But
further discussion? We ready to vote? Okay, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Opposed? Motion carries 4-1. All right, so we've established that. I think we've talked also about the CEC continuing to participate in research. That also we'd like to see explored.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. And I would ask if we could have 2 to 4 weeks to, an understanding with the board. I'm not certain how quickly we can get all that information together.
Understood.
We will move with as much dispatch as we reasonably can, so we would definitely include the Mass CEC in this as well.
Does that vote suggest an affirmation of the process, or do you think, would the staff still want the board to vote to affirm the process that you put forward?
Well, I would prefer if the board could affirm the process that we're pursuing so that we have a sense of your comfort level that we're going in the right direction, if you're willing to do so. Obviously, it doesn't guarantee the timetable, but I would ask your consideration for that.
I'll make a motion to approve the staff process recommendations.
Second?
A motion and a second. Discussion on the motion. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposition? It's unanimous. With respect to dates, the town manager mentioned 2 to 4 weeks, and just so the board is aware, we do have a scheduled meeting for the 26th, which is 2 weeks from now. We could, if necessary, meet next week. The warrant for the fall town meeting closes on the 6th of September. And the next meeting, so we have the meeting on the 26th of this month. And with the warrant closing on the 6th, we might be able to have placeholder articles, I would imagine. We vote the warrant on the 16th of September. So just to give you some idea in terms of the timelines. So sometime between now and the 16th of September, we would have to have this information in order to proceed for the town meeting warrant. That does not, however, preclude a special town meeting be called by the board if we thought it was necessary.
This is the annual, this is the fall annual, but there could be a fall special, which could be, but that wasn't announced, was it?
You don't have to announce that yet.
Oh, okay. So we could have a full
We could,
special,
yes.
which will later.
Okay, any further discussion on this topic? All right then, we'll move on to the next item on our agenda, which is the minutes of meetings. We have minutes from our June 22nd retreat and from the July 29 public session.
I move approval of the minutes of June 22nd and thank our minute taker, Julian Suso, for a great job.
You're welcome.
So as a motion, do we have a second?
Second.
A motion and a second. Discussion on the motion. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposition? It's unanimous. And then the minutes of July 29, the public session.
Move approval of July 29th.
Second?
Motion and a second to approve the July 29 minutes as presented. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposition? Unanimous. Okay. And that brings us to the summary of actions. We have 4 items on the summary. I'll read through these if anyone would like to hold them.
Mr. Chairman, in an effort to be expedient, if I could give a disclosure before we read things. Some of these contain liquor license, and my blanket disclosure is that I'm a holder of an all-alcoholic seasonal liquor license. Thank you.
I'd like to hold number 3.
Okay, gonna hold number 3. Anyone want to hold any of these others? We just have 4 items here. So I'll need a...
Excuse me, number 3.
Number 3, okay. So then, a motion, please, for item 1, which is a 1-day liquor license, Woods Hole Historical Museum, August 30, 2013. Item number 2, request for special event, Wounded Warrior Bike Ride, September 20, 2013. And item number 4, to authorize the town manager to submit a program evaluation form for the wastewater projects to the Massachusetts DEP. Need a motion for those 3 items,
So
please.
moved.
I have a motion.
Second.
And a second. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposition? Unanimous. And Ms. Flynn, you held item number 3, as did Ms.
Yeah, I
Moffett.
held this because, first of all, I was trying to figure out this is an event that actually starts in the vineyard and ends in Falmouth. Because I was a little concerned about a liquor license from 3 to 9 if people were on their way. You know, in other words, the liquor is available before you get in the water. That was the first thing. The second thing is that it was pointed out that they do need a permit from the Coast Guard. And and then I guess the other question I had was the pig roasting on the dock, whether or not this was even permissible by the fire department, by the Board of Health. I would think that they would want to be made aware of that. And then the individual who's requesting the license, if this is on, I took that it's on the property of the boathouse. Is there somebody, maybe, could we ask questions? If it's on
Please
the,
identify yourself for the record. I will note that in here, there's a letter from the harbor, from licensing, from Ms. Grasso, mentioning that they are moving the event from Marina Park to private property, so. The applicant, I presume?
My name is John Benninghoff, resident of Falmouth. I'm a local musician.
oh, you're a musician, you're not associated with the boathouse?
No, well, I perform at the boathouse and at numerous...
But you're not an owner or part of the liquor license to the boathouse?
No.
You are the applicant?
Okay.
No, in fact, my partner and I last summer put on the Harborside Music Festival at the Bandshell, which was a success all in all, but to look at the casino reunion show and what they were able to do with a national headliner and, you know, a group of people that have put on events like that before. Basically, I'm looking to, about 2 months ago, I met a gentleman up in New Hampshire who is a leader in the Northeast board culture. In fact, he started it, an organization surrounded around surfing and music and art. And, you know, I told him that we were trying to put on this event here at Marina Park. And again, that's a big field to fill, and you know, playing at the boathouse every week, saw that space, and we had discussed it previously about putting on an event there, but it's all transpired very fast. As you were saying about the first road race, there's a lot of things that need to be figured out to move forward, but right now I have a national act on hold. They've held a date because they're playing in Nantucket, or excuse me, Edgartown the night before. And to be able to have that type of name recognition, and you know, a caliber act, again, John Cafferty, a lot of people know who he is, a lot of people want to go see it. So yeah, I appreciate you hearing me and putting me on the bill on such short notice. But yeah, that's where I'm at with it. And as far, I actually wanted to amend the pig roasting portion of it for numerous reasons. We hope to have vegetarian options as well, and I don't want to make that it's not on the flyer, we say, but I wanted, you know, if that's going to become an issue, I'd rather just alleviate that from the scenario, if that helps. But any other questions you have, I'd be happy to.
Well, my other question had to do with the liquor itself, because this isn't part of the boathouse license premises.
Correct.
So you would have to procure the liquor from somewhere else.
And that's how I would secure a national headliner. They're on hold right now. I have 2 different liquor sponsors who are willing to, A, put cash towards that, but B, provide beer. And at the Harborside Music Fest, we were granted a full liquor license last year, which went really successfully, but wine didn't sell. It was the beer and a tequila company of a family friend of mine that was really successful, and that's another issue that I received when I came and visited the other day, that you have to be a nonprofit status in order to serve alcohol other than beer and wine. So I said, you know, at this point, it's just trying to get it off the ground. And I feel like stand-up paddle, honestly, I don't know a whole lot about it, but I know it's one of the fastest growing sports in the world. And to be part of that in its developmental stages here in Falmouth, I think could be we might be sitting here and talking about that like the road race yesterday, so.
Well, I'm just saying that there's enough about it that it's uncertain, that it makes it difficult for us to know what we're really approving. So maybe I defer to one of the other selectmen.
A couple of things. Last year, I know you did run an event that was successful at the Bear and Shell, so you have somewhat of a track record. And I don't have a problem with trying new things, especially in the off-season. This isn't in the summer, it's the week after Labor Day. Couple of things. Number one is, you're asking for a long time, 6 hours. A wedding doesn't go for 6 hours. No wedding guy will give you more than 5 hours. That's a long period of time. Even at the casino reunion, they had to stop their beer and wine at 9. The event stopped at 10. So I would hope that we could modify it to 5 hours and you pick the 5 hours. But I think that, pending a Coast Guard permit, the Coast Guard will review this, and that's what the harbor master had suggested.
Right. Yep.
So I think we could approve that pending the Coast Guard permit. I mean, anything on the water, even Greg doesn't want to be the guy issuing the permit. It's going to be the Coast Guard that's going to do that. So between that and the harbor master also suggested a patrol boat, which would be a detail. So I would think that would be another fair requirement. And then the last thing is, there can't be any intermingling between the boathouse and Pier 37. Because that's a liquor licensed establishment. Nothing can leave that premises, or nothing can come into that premises from outside. So you'd be required for the security to make sure that no one from your event were able to leave with a beer and walk into the boathouse in regard to that. I think those are fair assumptions. And
the area's contained. There's like a rope or something around.
Right, in other words, you have it contained. Pier 37 property is a large property, goes all the way out to the street. So maybe you develop a plan.
We have one. We'd be in the area. We're going to shut down the forklift for the day, specifically right behind the boathouse where they load all the boats in, and that would be the designated area. We're trying to bring in a flatbed truck for a stage. Again, this is very developmental, and I appreciate you even hearing me out about it. But I think the potential here is great. And again, my issue with the liquor license in regards to only being able to serve beer and wine, even if we weren't to sell it, one of my main sponsors right now is the same tequila company that we had last year. And financially, I don't have the money to put up for a national headliner among, the other 5 acts I have lined up ready to go for this thing. But would it be possible for them to vend or, distribute alcohol? Or?
Unfortunately, if you get a beer and wine license, you can't give away, you can't allow anything else on that premises.
Okay.
Meaning another liquor. If you have no license, i.e. people could BYOB, though we'd like to have control of a given area. But in other words, you don't have the ability to have liquor because you're not a nonprofit. You're a beer, you can only have beer and wine because you're not a nonprofit.
Okay. So, I understand that concept. I just didn't know, as far as last year and how we move forward with that. But either way, it's fine, and we'll figure out how to raise the funds otherwise.
I guess I have a few questions.
Please.
I just thought, what a combination. You can go paddleboarding, you can have a pig roast, you can have something to drink, you can have that beautiful marina, you can look at all those yachts, and I hope all of it doesn't get all mixed up in one thing. I just thought about 200 to 300 people arriving in that area. They're not all going to be on the paddle boards. They're not.
No, ma'am.
No, they're the visitors. The others are coming in.
This is an after event for a sporting event, basically.
Okay.
At the end of the road race, they had the big party on the field and other events going on in conjunction. The concept is to have the paddle boards land at the Pier 37 and have it, a celebration of sorts.
And 300 people, you don't need to, you just put down that number?
No, I
You
didn't.
just-
I mean, we had that at the Harborside Music
Okay.
Festival, so that
All
was
right.
my gauge. And it's a big space. I don't have the specs on it, but it would hold easily two or 300
Okay, and so you don't need any police detail? Or
Uh,
maybe I look this way.
That would be up to the police department.
That's up to the police department, okay. And then we're not looking for the all alcoholic, we're just looking for the beer and the wine.
Well, I was, but yeah, given what I was told, that.
And this is all for profit? There's no non-profit part of this?
No, I mean, again, the Harborside Music Fest, we partnered with PAL, and after all of our expenses, we were only, it wasn't, we raised more money with musical instruments than we did actual money. So I would love to donate. In fact, I had breakfast this morning with Jeff Bowman, and he'll be down that day, and I had raised some money for him earlier in the summer. Again, what I can do above and beyond my expenses, I would love to donate, but I'm also trying to break even on an event like this, so.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
How would the board like to proceed?
I don't know. We don't have much to go by here. What do you think?
I'm willing to give it a chance. Cutting down the hours, would you want to cut it down from 3 to 8? Gets darker earlier, you don't have a lot of lighting on that site. So 3 to 8 might be better hours than a 5-hour period than.
Could we do 4 to 9?
You can do 4 to 9.
Okay.
But keep in mind that you get into darkness hours, noise is traveling across that harbor.
Again, there's a lot contingent on what the Coast Guard says.
Oh, right.
I'm
I
trying
mean-
to coordinate a bunch of people crossing over Vineyard Sound on paddle boards. There's going to be some logistical
So
aspects to that.
I'll make a motion that we approve the event, and.
Can we amend the pig roast part of it too?
The pig roast, the food's superfluous, it doesn't make any difference.
No, I was doing the pig roast
Yeah.
on the yachts.
Amend my I'm gonna make a motion that we approve the event from 4 to 9 PM, subject to a designated area, a plan submitted to the town manager's office of where the event will be on the property, as well as how you intend on providing security in that area. So that those are two parts of the motion. There'll be no cross between the boathouse property and this, especially with the beverages. And that it's subject to the Coast Guard permit and subject to both the police department and the harbor master's office determination whether you need a detail or not. So that would be paid for at your expense.
How about the fire department, because they deal with the rescue end of it?
Well, all right, so in
No.
other words,
Well, I think the harbor master
Their
detail and the Coast Guard approval
Sufficient.
would cover those issues.
right, so that would be my, my motion that would include all of those caveats.
We have a motion, do we have a second?
Second?
Motion and a second. Discussion on the motion? Are we ready to vote?
Yeah.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposition?
Thank
Good
you
luck to you.
kindly. I appreciate it.
All right, and that dispenses with the summary of actions. Any reports from the individual members of the board? Any, town manager?
Well, I'll tell you that Becky and I happened to attend the Falmouth Heights Mara Vista Home Improvement Association annual meeting last Saturday, and we were very much welcomed. There were a lot of summer people there. They gave us a whole list of things that they like about what we do. They also made some suggestions about what we're doing now that they didn't like. One is to do away with the summary of actions on our agenda. They really like being able to see published in advance where the events are taking place, if they're in their neighborhoods, if they have any concerns, they have an opportunity to come here and express them. So they kind of like the idea that we deal with that every week. They also thought that we should meet every week. That not so much because we should work harder, just that they like every week to know what's happening in the town. A lot of people are from out of town. We had someone tell me who lives in another town that's 4 square miles, that has a lot wealthier town than Falmouth, that we're just the best town, that it's clean, the DPW does such a great job with keeping the town clean and keeping the streets maintained and the sidewalks and the beaches, and they just love everything about it. They think the town does a great job in making the town so presentable to people who come here to enjoy in the summertime. And we heard, I have a list of some of the other suggestions they have, which I'll give to you, but basically a lot of people had some, and Matt McNamara was the featured speaker there. He spoke on the ZBA and what the ZBA actually does. And next year, I think they want to have our Director of Assessing come and talk about taxes and, you know, what the formulas are for taxes and all of that. So we'll have to let Trish know that she might be on their agenda next year. But anyway, it was great. And then, then we went along, a lot of us went to the Old Stone Dock Association annual meeting the Saturday night. And that was like another, what do you want to call it? Thank you so much to the town for all you do for our neighborhood. So I thought it was really quite nice. It was very uplifting to know that there were homeowners associations in town that really appreciate what the town does, and they work with the town too, which is something I was not aware of, how closely some of the neighborhood associations really work with town departments to help them make improvements to their neighborhoods.
I just wanted to add on the end of that I thought was a very interesting story for the police department, the day that we went over and looked at all of the equipment and the attack dog and all of that, that one of their issues was that the Commodores were going to be playing on Friday night, and we had allowed a carnival to come in town and set up where usually they hit their home runs. So they had to have someone go out and make sure that the equipment from the carnival was protected from the home runs from the Commodores, and I thought that was an interesting detail.
Anyone else?
I guess I should report on correspondence that I'd heard from the Cape Cod Foundation and with a request about the library trustees issue, and wanted to know if there should be a representative here. I hadn't looked at the agenda carefully enough to see that it's actually not on the agenda, so I want to apologize for representatives that we're not discussing it tonight. And I just realized that as we got to the end of our agenda.
If it's something that the board does need to be involved in, though, we can work through the town manager's office, make sure it gets on the agenda and address it appropriately. Mr. Sousa.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. I would like to make a few comments, if I may, supplementary comments about the 41st Annual Falmouth Road Race. Chief Dunn made some great comments about it, as have members of this board. I do want to echo the board's thanks to Police Chief Dunn and his staff for their dedicated, detailed work in preparing for this major and complex community event, especially given the public safety realities forthcoming in the aftermath of the Boston Marathon terrorist bombing. And we keep in mind that the folks we work with here with the Falmouth Road Race also managed the Boston Marathon. So this was really the first major running event since that terrible tragedy occurred. And it was particularly uplifting for all of us who had the chance to witness it, to see the joy as the race started and also as the race was finishing, as many people applauded what really represented the first successful major public event since that terrible tragedy. And it's particularly fitting, I think, that Falmouth had such an important role in that, with their many connections to running in general. I also want to thank Fire Chief Sullivan, Marine and Environmental Services Director Greg Frazier, Deputy Director Chuck Martinson, Public Works Director Ray Jack, and the many, many other Falmouth staff, colleagues of ours, so closely involved in overseeing and ensuring public safety during this important event. We also greatly appreciate the excellent support and collaboration of our other public safety entities, including Sheriff Cummings, U.S. Coast Guard, and others too numerous to mention. Many, many volunteers involved in the road race, and as Selectman Moffett mentioned, literally hours after it was concluded, one had to look closely to determine that anything had even happened. They did such a fabulous event, a job in cleaning up and following up after this event, and a number of conscientious people involved. Really, I think it speaks volumes about the Falmouth community. So I do want to thank the Falmouth Road Race Committee and their many volunteers. Also have worked in a very professional manner to once again facilitate an event of such profound quality, and we applaud everybody for their fine work. I also want to note that Stephanie and I were very pleased to participate for the first time in the Saturday Falmouth Walk event and that fundraiser, and I know that Selectman Moffett and Selectman Flynn also were a regular part of that event and participated in the walk as well, and we were very happy to cross paths with you in that regard. Also, Stephanie and I were happy to be part of the August 4th Old Stone Dock Association event to which Selectman Flynn referred on the grounds of the Beach Breeze Inn. So that was a wonderful event as well. And that concludes my report, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
If I may just add one thing about the Falmouth Walk. They raise money for a lot of the nonprofits and charities in town. And they had about 600 and maybe 50 or so walkers last year. And this year it went up to a little over 675. So they're really hoping to get to the 700 mark. But they also added 2 more charities to their list this year. One is the Falmouth Service Center, and the other was the, the Falmouth support for the troops. What do they call it? The Falmouth Military Support Group. That's their other charity, was the Falmouth
Wounded Warriors, I believe.
Charity.
Wounded Warriors. Was that?
Yeah. And they raised, I don't know how much money they raised this year, but more than last year. So that was good.
Any correspondence the board would like to highlight this evening? Okay, well, with that, it brings us to the end of our agenda.
Motion to adjourn.
We have a motion and a second to adjourn. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Welcome to Falmouth. If you're a visitor, this is where surf and sun meet for fun. If you're a resident, this is where you'll find the businesses and the resources necessary to fill all of your needs. If you're a business person, this can be your home. Join with other men and women who work together to make this a sustainable economy year-round. Welcome to Falmouth, Cape Cod.
Remember, WC Communications is your printing team. We are calm and cool under pressure. You can call us at 508-563-7366 or toll free at 1-800-696-7303.